the Human Enhancement Podcast. I'm really excited to have in-house today Melia Robinson, a senior reporter with Business Insider. And I think she's really made a claim to fame with really covering all things innovation, from biohacking to the growing marijuana business to, I think, you just going through your story list, recently, going from the weird culture of Silicon Valley to just weird culture happening in the 21st century.
Yeah.
How would you describe your beat?
I'm living vicariously through all the San Franciscans who make more money than I do, I think. So I bounced around beats several times since joining Business Insider. I've been there 4 years now. But currently I cover the culture of the San Francisco Bay Area, which includes Silicon Valley. So it's about how techies eat, sleep, shop, spend their money, enhance their mind and bodies,
right.
Biohacking. And I've also covered legal marijuana, as you mentioned, as sort of part of that. And I am a big fan of using my body for weird experiments on behalf of our readers.
I know there's some interesting stories around a ketogenic diet, and we have Soylent in front of us, and let's get into that. So what is your background? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the Bay Area?
No, I couldn't be further from it, I guess. I grew up in New Hampshire in a small town about an hour north of Boston, which is we have civilization there. It's not, we had more people than cows. But I always wanted to be a reporter my entire life, and I think I was really lucky in that way because I had so many friends who through school, were still trying to figure it out.
I mean, I think most people still don't know what they're want to do, right?
I just wanted this so badly. I loved talking to people. I always asked too many questions. And I went to Syracuse University and studied magazine journalism and information management and technology. So it was kind of a mix of what I wanted to write about and how to write. And I started out in our New York office.
For Business Insider?
For Business Insider, yeah. I actually got the gig out of college. We had recruiters come to a career fair, and they hired a bunch of us out of Syracuse. We have a little mafia going at BI.
I mean, it's interesting for the folks that are interested in the journalism or reporting path. I mean, did you blog while you were in school, or was it sort of how did you end? I mean, I know it's not easy to break in.
Yeah. I didn't blog through school, but I was very much embedded in our student publications. I worked for several doing writing, and then I was editor-in-chief of our school's cultural magazine, 360 Degrees. Shout out.
Shout out to the college days. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I tried to get as many clips from the real world as possible. I went to New York City about every summer through school and tried to get internships. And I had some weird ones. My first internship was at Every Day with Rachel Ray magazine. Do you know who Rachel Ray is?
The celebrity chef.
Yeah, okay.
I remember her getting some trouble with some non-PC stuff, or is that someone else?
You might be thinking of Paula Deen.
Maybe, okay. Maybe Rachel Ray's not I think not
Rachel's cool.
Okay.
But she was my first foray into magazine journalism writing, and at that time I was just doing subscriber newsletters and research for stories. The next summer I went to the Oprah magazine, which is a step up in celebrity icon publications. And I did see Oprah once. It was the highlight of my career.
Did she look at you? Did she say hi to you? What was the tipping point to go sort of more into your current beat? How did it transition from entertainment to, I think I heard a little bit of the story of how you started getting into sort of biohacking and interesting foods.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to hear that story. I mean, we have Soylent right in front of us right here.
So I moved into an innovation beat a couple years later, and then it was really an umbrella term, and I struggled because I wasn't, making really strong source relationships like I'd hoped, in part because I think I wasn't an expert in any given area. I was just spreading myself too thin. And, so I was trying to hunt down a beat that I could really own, that I was really interested in. One of the first that really made me passionate was legal marijuana. And about a year and a half ago, I was in a marijuana dispensary reporting an article,
This was in Colorado probably at the time?
In California.
Okay.
It was a
California.
medical marijuana
Okay.
dispensary, but not just any marijuana dispensary, but the Apple Store of pot shops. It had like made headlines for its smart design. And so I was doing a story there, and about 10 minutes in, the guy's like taking bud out of the cases, and I'm photographing it and getting the tour, and I started to feel really lightheaded.
You didn't eat anything. You weren't smoking anything.
I think I wasn't smoking anything. I did have breakfast,
Okay.
But I think I was probably really dehydrated. I started getting tunnel vision. I could see the guy was talking, and I couldn't hear anything. And
You're like, whoa, what the fuck is going on?
And I passed out.
Oh, gee.
I fell face forward on the cement floor, and I broke my jaw in 3 places.
Wow.
Which I like to think is the closest I'll ever be to becoming Kanye West, who famously broke his jaw in 3 places after surviving a near-fatal car accident in 2002. There's a song about it. And what followed was I had a surgery to reconstruct my jaw, and I had my mouth wired shut for about 6 weeks. So I didn't have a lot of options for what to eat then. I had a NutriBullet system, and I was blending lasagna and omelets and chicken pad thai and like all sorts of things you would never want to see pureed.
Jeez.
And it was getting exhausting because I was having to like clean my blender like 6 times a day, having these like really small meals through a straw. And my boyfriend, who works in the tech industry, recommended that I try Soylent, which I'd had before in the powdered version and hated, and have like photos of me gagging on it because I thought it tasted like chalk paste. But I gave it a try. By then, Soylent 2.0 had come out, which was their bottled version. And I started only drinking Soylent, about like 6 bottles a day. And just to paint a picture, at this time in my life, I was like in a really dark place. I was hopped up on all these pain medications. I wasn't eating enough, so my energy was really down, and I was having really severe panic attacks because I was so nervous that I was going to pass out again.
Jeez,
and I was like scared to leave the house. I had taken time off of work during my recovery, and in that time, Soylent became this like island unto itself. It was the one thing in my life that I didn't have to think about. There was no preparation, no cleanup. I knew that, with every bottle I was getting, 20 grams of protein, right, and 20% of my daily nutritional needs. And I started never leaving the house without it. It went with me on trains and to doctor's appointments. I had a very ill-timed trip to Florida, and I like shipped cases of Soylent to my hotel ahead of time.
Wow.
So I knew I would like have it. And
because your mouth was just wired shut, like you just couldn't eat.
I couldn't eat anything.
Right.
And I became obsessed with it. And I think more importantly is it made me feel really empowered. I was like making this quirky food choice, like living off of a meal replacement shake. But it made me feel good, and I felt like it served me. And so
Rob and the Soylent team should take this clip and link it on their website.
I know. And so I think at that point, I kind of had this aha moment. Until then, I thought biohacking was something that was reserved for people who wanted to like implant antennas in their head to hear color. And
we had Neil Harbison, the guy who did that on our program.
Cyborg.
Yes,
awesome. Or like people putting chips in their fingers to like unlock doors. Yep. And I dismissed it as like this weird Silicon Valley thing.
Right.
And Soylent showed me that there's room for everyone in biohacking, that we can make like simple choices to be smarter and stronger and healthier every day. And so I'm like a Soylent lifer now. I mean, I eat other food now, for sure. I eat other food now, but I still have Soylent every day for breakfast. And after that experience, I just, I became more empathetic, I think, with the biohacking community. I wanted to embed myself and learn more about, what decisions they made that other people raised their eyebrows out, but I guessed from my experience made them feel really good. And
right.
I wanted to, like bring a voice to their interests, I guess.
Interesting.
So that's kind of how I got into biohacking. And, you know, one of the first companies I covered was actually Human back when it was Nutrabox.
Yeah.
In 2015, I wrote about Go Cubes when they launched, and I think when they went to Amazon. And that was like kind of on the same spectrum as Soylent for me, in that it was something that I think catered to everyone. Like everyone eats, everyone drinks coffee. And you could use biology and technology to serve yourself better.
Right. It's like a little bit like, how do we re-engineer something that, well, I guess is more of like an automatic cultural phenomenon, and how do we optimize it for like a modern use case? Is essentially a little bit of like the biohacking in the broad consumer sense, right? I think the way I think about it is that computers weren't necessarily designed for everyone 30, 40 years ago, but it needs to be progression to bring these concepts that's accessible to everyone.
Yeah, it's like not so much a dark web thing anymore.
Yeah.
And I have, you know, these companies to look at that are hiring scientists on their team and like doing the research.
Yeah.
And it's there's like a level of accountability that makes it like presentable for a mainstream audience.
So what do you, I mean, but I would say sometimes the most interesting stories are like the dark web crazy people. Like in your reporting, have you met, I'm just curious, like the spectrum of folks that you talk to, like, were there any instances where you're like, whoa, these people are super shady, but like super interesting?
I don't want to like talk smack,
but or just high level. You don't need to name names, but just like the concepts.
Okay.
Or
I think that there are maybe some companies in biohacking that like rely too heavily on their own like in-house studies to promote their product. You know, I think one of the most like widely publicized cases of this is like Bulletproof Coffee, who Dave Asprey, their founder, has, you know, built this multi-million-dollar empire on one thing, buttered coffee. Yeah. And from there, it spawned best-selling books and conferences, and they now have a line of cafes that are coming to LA and I want to say New York. And I would just love to see from these more cutting-edge biohackers a little more transparency, I guess, in you know, what evidence they have to support their claims. Right. But probably one of my earliest exposures to like a more niche biohack community was going to a We Fast breakfast.
Our fasting community. Yeah. I know a lot of our listeners were part of that.
Yeah. I think it was it Kara Swisher who first wrote about you guys for BuzzFeed? No, that wouldn't have been it.
Natasha.
Natasha TQ wrote about it. Thank you. And I read her story and was like blown away. One thing I try to do differently is bring visuals to my story. I'm like an amateur photographer. And I think I had approached you and your co-founder Mike about coming to a WeFast meeting because I wanted to talk to these people and document them through my camera. And intermittent fasting is like a hack that I have never tried on my own, but is endlessly fascinating to me.
Have you not tried fasting since then? Or
I've never tried fasting. I'm really freaked out that I'm gonna pass out from not eating. Okay. Well, probably because I have that like personal history of passing out once and breaking my jaw. But it's I've written about it several times, and I know that some of the biggest names in tech are obsessed with it. Like, I just read a story about Phil Libin, the former CEO of Evernote, who runs a AI startup now. He fasts intermittently.
He does pretty long fast, so we became friends recently. Yeah, he does like 3-4 day fasts pretty continuously. He's getting into like the blood measurements of measuring his ketones and glucose. Wow. He's like true full believer.
Yeah. So okay. Also, another big concern I have about intermittent fasting is I'm like very prone to hangriness.
Yeah.
had hangriness like been an issue for you before you started intermittent fasting?
Yes. So I mean, I think when I first started fasting, I don't want. Well, I like how your reporter instincts kick in. Now it's a question to me. Yeah, I grew up in kind of having a fairly quick metabolism. Was generally a thinner person, would like lose weight if I wasn't exercising and trying to eat a lot. So when I first heard about fasting, this is about two years ago now, it was like, yeah, like this is insane. Like why would I like starve myself, get weaker? Yeah. I want snacks. We're all used to snacking.
Yes.
But we committed to it. Paul, one of our colleagues or second employee, was like, hey, interesting data around longevity out of USC research, interesting data, a TED Talk from a King's College researcher, Dr. Sandrine Thurett. She's really into neurogenesis, growing new neurons. There's really interesting data around fasting to grow new neurons. I was like, okay, this sounds like it will suck, but we're biohackers. We can experiment and play with it. And yeah, admittedly, the first couple times was just hard because your body is so used to having, constant sort of glucose, constant insulin spikes, and then you're taking that away. It's like, whoa, what's going on? Yeah. But I think the third, fourth time fasting, it ended up being, we nicknamed one of the fasts, like the 36-hour fast, a monk fast, because it felt very sort of calm. Yeah. And I know you started doing a ketogenic diet, so I want to get into that. So they're like very related in some ways.
I learned about the ketogenic diet after going to a We Fast meeting, and
so the hangriness, like, did you get hangry on a ketogenic diet? It was just like, I'm just actually curious because like on a ketogenic diet, you're taking your glucose load very, very low. So you're probably not drinking too much Soylent. I don't know if you were drinking.
I wasn't drinking Soylent. Right. That was one of the hardest adjustments.
Yeah. So I know like that kind of macronutrient ratio change shifts your metabolism in a way where there probably was some carbohydrate withdrawal. Yeah. And then as you get more used to using fats and ketones as fuel, sort of rebalance that. And you're like, oh, okay, this is a very steady mental state.
Yeah. Well, let me just back up and say, I remember when I went to the We Fast breakfast, I had this thought that like, if I were to fast for 36 hours, the first thing I'd want is like a plate of fried chicken and waffles, like drenched in maple syrup and, big creamy sugary cup of coffee. Right. And no one ordered like the Grand Slam at this restaurant you guys were at. Like everyone was just eating eggs and bacon, and I was like, oh, that's like fun, but that's like not super indulgent. Like you guys just fasted for 36 hours. Treat yourself. And
we used to start like that. Like,
really?
The first 2-3 times we fasted, and this is just our team because we didn't have like a community, just like us. Like, we had the pancakes and waffles. Okay. and then we realized that we felt like freaking like we just went like we were super clean, and we went bam, like just carb overload.
Yeah. So what I learned from talking to people at that meeting was that a high fat meal kind of helps ease you out of the fast and keep your ketone production high. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm probably not ready to commit to intermittent fasting yet, but like I could eat eggs and bacon. Yeah. And I have been someone who's tried like every fad diet I think imaginable, and my most
juicing, like Whole30. A lot of people talk about Whole30.
Yeah, that's really popular right now. Yeah. I mean, this isn't so much a fad, but like I did that
when I talked to her really? 2 weeks ago. She said, "Yeah, I'm on my Whole30."
Very popular right now. I think it's probably really similar to keto. I'm gonna guess.
I think it's like less. There's like no refined carbohydrate. I would say it's like I think it's just like a healthy, balanced diet. Okay. For like standard American diet, it's just like kind of shitty. Right. Or like Whole30 is like better, and then like keto is just like cutting out carbs more extremely.
Well, the diet I stuck with the most was Weight Watchers, which I did through college and is like, like #basic of diets. But I was attracted to the ketogenic diet because Weight Watchers, like, they use a point system, right? Different foods have different point values, and you have to stay within this number of points per day. And things like nuts and eggs and cheese were like very severely punished on the Weight Watcher system because they were high fat. Right. And I happen to love all those foods. And so the ketogenic diet appealed to me because I could eat those things like en masse. Yeah. And when I decided really early on that I was going to try it, and I was going to write an article about it. So my
Yeah.
editor insisted that I like see a doctor to make sure that I was like going to be safe about it. So I teamed up with Dr. Priyanka Wali,
Yeah.
who I think has been on this or
Yes.
or is friends with you guys.
Well, I think, I just, we had met, I actually met her when I gave a talk at a World Fair Nano SF, and she's also like a comedian. So she was like on the
Yeah.
comedy track, and it was like, she came up afterwards. She's like, I'm like here for the comedy show, but I'm actually a doctor, and you were talking about biohacking, and, you know, we should hang out, we should talk. So that's
Yeah.
how we met.
She's great.
And I knew that, she was like she's like one of the, I think, emerging doctors that is using ketogenic diets in her practice.
So she's like an internal medicine physician at California Pacific Hospital here in San Francisco. And she works mostly, I think, with people who have diabetes or are pre-diabetic. And so she uses the ketogenic diet as part of her treatment. And similarly, she used herself as a guinea pig first and like tested it out to make sure this is something she felt comfortable prescribing. So I met with her a couple times, and we went through like my medical history, and she taught me about how to count carbs the right way. You know, I wasn't just looking at the total carbohydrates, but I was subtracting the dietary fiber because that stuff just passes through your system.
So it's the net carbs that count.
It's the net carbs that count. And my first week doing it, she was really nervous about me suffering from carbohydrate withdrawal, which you just mentioned. Which I think is a real thing, because at that point I was eating like 250 grams of carbs a day, like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, how much is in a Soylent?
34. So, but like I ate a ton of fruit. I love pasta. I love sandwiches, like a lot of carbs.
Yeah.
So to start, she had me just do breakfast and lunch ketogenic, and dinner I could eat normally. And the first week was really still miserable. I got a lot of migraines.
Okay.
And I don't know that I was like more cranky than usual, but I thought about food a lot. Like the cravings were so real. And we have these peanut butter filled pretzels in our office that are like my brand of crack. And I'd get up and like go for a handful, like not even thinking about it, just like mechanically. And then have that realization and go sit back to my desk.
So what were you eating in that morning and lunch period? So,
I had to start waking up earlier.
And you were preparing
I would
like
make
eggs
and
avocado.
bacon and avocado.
Yeah.
I remember like fried eggs weren't doing it for me so much by like day 3, and I switched to scrambled.
Yeah.
But it felt very different to me, those breakfasts, because I mean, for one, I only ever drink Soylent.
And normally
for
you were
breakfast.
drinking like a Soylent
Yeah.
2.0.
Yeah. So I was like eating these really high-fat meals for breakfast, and sometimes in the beginning I would feel like a little like queasy about it because I think I just wasn't used to eating so much fat. But
Did you do any blood work or anything beforehand?
yeah,
Okay.
I did. I did like a resting insulin panel, and she checked my cholesterol, and all of my
triglycerides, cholesterol, like sort of the lipid levels.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really know what those things mean, but like she told me that they were normal.
Okay.
So fortunately I like didn't have a ton of room for improvement, I guess, but there's always room.
Yeah.
But a couple weeks in, I started feeling fuller longer. Instead of my typical lunch, which would be a sandwich or I love tender greens, that like bougie salad place, but I would order it with like a side of mashed potatoes or even like, a food truck, like Curry Up Now for lunch. Instead, I was eating a lot of like sad desk salads with like tons of chicken on it. Or I now every week bring a block of cheese to work and one of the packs of like pre-sliced salami from Whole Foods.
That's your go-to snack.
That's
now.
my go-to snack, cheese and salami. And at the farmer's market on Thursday, there's a booth that sells like raw nuts, and I buy the salted ones. And that's my other that's become my peanut butter filled pretzel like brand of indulgence.
So week 2, you were going full ketogenic meals every single day.
Yeah, by week 2. And by week 2, I didn't feel like there was a big noticeable difference, and I think started to get really impatient. Like,
Right.
I feel the same, but just
I'm
miss
just eating
carbs.
different stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And week 2, I started using a, what do you call the things?
Finger pricks?
Yeah,
So you're
I started
measuring
finger
your glucose
pricking.
and ketone levels.
Yeah, I just did ketone level, but I bought
Okay.
the, like, Abbott
Precision Extra.
Precision Extra device
Yeah.
on Amazon, like, from a third-party seller.
Yeah.
And
Were you scared of pricking yourself?
oh my gosh, yes. I remember, like, the first time I was doing it in the office, and I, like, kept psyching myself out, like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. No. And, like, finally built up the courage, and it kind of does hurt. Like, I feel really bad for people who have to do that every day.
I'm so used to it now.
Yeah,
where
I'm
it's,
sure.
But, like, I think I mean, I was just as scared as you in the beginning, too. Like, I didn't want to just jab myself. It's just, like, we played, like, breath monitors to detect ketone levels, but I think blood is really the way to go.
Way
And
more
it ends up
accurate.
being just, like, very quick, too.
Yeah, it turned out to be, like, not a big deal.
Yeah.
Although it did take me forever just to learn, like, how to use that thing. Yeah, I started, like, pricking myself and having a, like, precise measurement of my ketone production really appealed to me, especially as someone who had done Weight Watchers for
Right.
so many years, because I really liked, like,
Quantifying it,
Yeah,
right? Like, you're subjectively,
yes.
like, I don't know, like, maybe I'm just, like, psyching myself out, but it's like, hey, your ketones are actually going up. It's
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
my macros are actually right.
Yeah, so even though I wasn't seeing, like, a noticeable improvement yet in my energy, I could start to see the changes on my ketone monitor. And I stuck with it. And I mean, I stuck with it hard. Like, I really didn't have many cheats. I remember once eating an individual, like, personal pizza. That was unfortunate. And once my parents came to town, and that was, like, Mardi Gras, and I just, like, went to town on everything that they wanted to spoil me with.
Right.
But
It's like two times of
yeah.
carbs out of, like, 2 months.
2 months. I did for 2 months. And by week 4, maybe, it was, like, a world of difference.
Like cognitively, like,
Yeah.
okay.
I started to have boundless energy. I would get up in the morning and I just felt, like, ready to go. I would still have a cup of black coffee, or maybe with half and half, but I wouldn't need 3 more cups of coffee after that.
Right. And how did your ketone levels evolve through that time?
So I
To
think
give people the
about-
sense, I mean, if we're eating a normal, typical diet, American diet, we'll be at 0.1, very nominal levels of ketones.
By my second week, I was at 0.4.
Okay.
And then by about a month in, I peaked at 0.9.
Okay.
Which
It's pretty good.
I remember I DM'd you because I had remembered from reporting on your, like, journey in the keto diet that you were above, like, the single digits. Like,
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I hate Jeff. Like, what is he doing? And why can't I pass 1?
Yeah.
And I talked to Dr. Wally, and she, like, made me feel better because she said that you really can't achieve that kind of ketone production unless you're doing intermittent fasts.
Yeah.
Is that true in your experience?
Well, if you eat super ketogenic and you're super rigorous around not just carbs but also proteins, because proteins actually convert into glucose through gluconeogenesis. So when a lot of people are trying to eat keto, they oftentimes overweight the protein load. So typically it's like a 4-1-1 ratio, 4 parts fat, 1 part protein, 1 part carb. So protein often ends up creeping higher.
Yeah, I definitely can see that was true in my case. And I also spent a lot of my, like, carb allowance on fruit, which can catch up to you.
Yeah.
I think, like, berries in particular.
But, like, I know that, like, if you're getting to, like, 0.9, that's, like, very good. So, like, we've had people in the office who are like, oh, yeah, I'm eating keto. And, like, we jab them. And, like, they're 0.3. It's like, dude, nah.
Back of the line.
No, I mean, it's just hard to do it because there's so many just carbs and proteins just hidden in everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think 0.9, I mean, typically over
about a month.
0.5, it's like classically like
Right,
ketosis.
right.
So like you're definitely burning through
Yeah.
fat reserves.
So I had a lot of energy. I one of the most magical things is I thought about food all the time. Like, I was not before keto.
Okay.
Before keto, I thought about food all the time and would, like, you know, think about what my next meal was and where it was coming from. And I snacked, like, religiously throughout the day. And once I was like in the thick of the keto diet, I would like look up at the clock and see it was noon and like it was time to eat lunch, and I had like no bodily signals that was time. Yeah. So when I wasn't thinking about food so much, I actually think I was focusing on work more, and I really wished I had used some kind of like productivity tracking software,
like Rescue Time or something. I mean, we use that. Yeah.
Which one do you use?
Rescue Time, which is a little background process. Like
yeah, I really wish I had done something like that, because I felt more focused. I felt cleaner, and happier. I think by then I wasn't really experiencing hangriness so much anymore.
Yeah.
And I also like dove into the world of like the ketogenic online community, and like ruled.me, I want to say, is like a popular site, and I went to them for tons of recipes, and there are like mom bloggers who post high fat recipes. I was introduced to the term fat bomb, the idea of like making a meal that
super fatty,
because one of the hardest parts I think about the keto diet was just making sure I was consuming enough fat, because like you're not going to put butter on literally everything. So what are the ways you can sneak it into your diet so you make sure that your body like has enough to fuel on? So my go-to was cauliflower, like a cauliflower take on a loaded baked potato. So it was like mashed cauliflower with sour cream, cheese, bacon, chives.
Sounds pretty good.
And the one thing I couldn't bring myself to do during the keto diet was putting butter in my coffee, which I remember seeing someone do at a We Fast meeting once. And I've since then dabbled in a lot of butter coffees. But, you know, I get now why people do that, because it's just like another way to sneak fat into your diet. So now, you know, months have passed, and I am sadly back on carbs, which I'm so embarrassed to admit.
No, I mean, I will cycle in typically out of keto and into carbs. So you need carbs for anaerobic exercises. Like carbs are useful for certain things.
Yeah.
It's just too hard for it to maintain.
More like the cravings were just really hard. It was really hard to maintain for me. Like, even though I felt incredible, I missed my favorite foods. Like, I missed pizza and spaghetti. And I'm also, like, cooking for my boyfriend, who I think, like...
Didn't want to eat keto?
Not so much. And so right now I'm trying to convince him to do a vegan diet for another article on Business Insider, but he's not so much into that one yet.
Maybe shared a fun experience.
So yeah, I've not stuck with it because I just found it really difficult to maintain, but I think I'm like making better choices still. I still bring my like block of cheese and salami to work every week, and I still eat nuts as my like go-to snack.
It seems like you're just like smarter on your balanced diet, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one question I've had these last few weeks is like, you know, I'm making better snacking choices, and you know, I do make eggs for breakfast a lot more often than I used to, but like, do you think you can maintain some level of nutritional ketosis if you're only like half-assing it? You know what I mean? Like, it's your ketone production's not going to be there, but does it still count for something?
Well, if you're not depleting your glycogen, then you're not producing ketones. But I think like a lot of the emerging, I don't know if you've seen this latest study published a few weeks ago. It was published in the Lancet, the Pure study, right? Like it was an interesting result where overall mortality dropped with a little bit higher doses of fat. But this is not like ketogenic levels of fat. This was like 10%, which was like the lowest quintile of fat, to 35% fat calories, which is the highest quintile of fat.
Wow.
And folks in that top quintile lived longer. Overall mortality, had lower cardiovascular incidences.
Wow.
So it is interesting. So basically, like I think some keto people stretch that result too far and saying that, oh, that's proven that keto is right. Well, keto is not 35% fat. That's still very, very high carbs in a keto perspective. But it seems that there's, you know, at least a large data set. This is 135,000 people, showing that very, very low levels of fat is probably not that good. So I think it's like you're probably just getting to like a more sensible, balanced diet where there's too much like carbs just floating around. You're just like shifting it into more balanced.
I think I've definitely toned down my carb intake. Like there's no way I'm still above like 200 carbs a day like I was before doing keto.
Yeah.
And it's
your
something
insulin levels like
I actually down? Like they plummeted. When I last checked I was at 0.2.
That's like, good. Wait.
I'd like it to be better, but I just re-upped on my supply of Lancets and the test strips because I want to start tracking again. Tracking like brings a level of accountability and it kind of makes me competitive with myself. Yeah. So I think if I start getting back into that habit, maybe I'll stick with those food choices.
Yeah, I mean, more. I think for myself, a mix of intermittent fasting and eating ketogenic meals to break fast is like a helpful way to like not necessarily just like a spike in and out of ketosis pretty quickly. Yeah. Right. So like the way, typically you store around 16 to 24 hours of glycogen. If you fast through that period, eat keto, you'll get into like 0.5 to 0.7 pretty quickly. So like that's how I kind of play with it without having to be like, boom, like I'm eating, butter and avocado and eggs and that's it. Yeah. I mean, it's just hard to do. Like I understand completely that like, I think people that even say they eat keto are not like doing it properly unless they're measuring and showing like 1.0, 2.0 type numbers. Yeah.
It's so one thing that is really interesting to me right now, I've been writing about a lot, is butter coffee, which I brought up earlier. Yeah. I see it as an extension of like the keto movement. Yeah.
The keto trend is massive. If you looked at Google Trends, it's just like.
Oh, really? Well,
yeah. I'll just pull it up for you.
Yeah, please do. I totally believe that because I think one of the ways we can tell something is going mainstream is when we start to see segments about it on the morning talk shows. Yeah. And there was a segment on GMA about the ketogenic diet a few months ago, and my like dreams came true when recently the Today Show asked me to go on and talk about my ketogenic diet experience.
Today Show?
It didn't work out. They ended up not doing the segment. But like the Today Show wanted to talk about the keto diet. So like that must mean it's a thing.
I think the biology is just getting better. Like just more doctors that are just like, okay, this is not just freaking crazy. I mean, it's interesting. Like I think it makes sense to have like these debates and these explorations where people are getting more open to like the options.
Yeah, and I think there have been some like mainstream studies in the last few years that no longer make fat out to be the bad guy. Yeah. And
I mean, there's some interesting authors been on the show like Gary Taubes, who's like really talking about like sugar versus fat, like different industries with their different interests are like lobbying FDA and USDA to do the different dietary requirements. I mean, just like it can get like pretty conspiracy theory.
Yeah. One of my favorite conspiracy theories happening within keto is so I don't know if you know, but cauliflower is like the new kale. It's like the sexiest new vegetable, right? Okay. Between 2015 and 2016, sales of cauliflower in the US spiked something like 13%. Okay. Google in 2016 named cauliflower a rising star according to its search trend data. And not only are we seeing people eat cauliflower in rice form in like the biohacking community, but brands like Trader Joe's and Green Giant and Kroger's are selling like microwavable bags of riced cauliflower. And it's like a really easy entry for people who want to like reduce their carb intake by swapping in carbs or swapping in cauliflower. The rice industry is furious. Apparently,
rice sales are dropping.
Rice USA has like is a lobby group for the rice industry, and they say that they plan to ask the US FDA to review its definition of rice because they're really pissed that the cauliflower people
calling themselves rice.
Are calling themselves rice and like cutting in on their market. And I guess the consensus is that they probably don't have a case because no one owns the word rice. Right. And similarly, like lobby groups for almond and soy milk have, the dairy lobby groups have fought producers of almond and soy milk over the year because they're like, this is not real milk.
Yeah.
But they haven't made like much progress there.
That
so.
seems even more sensible.
Yeah. So long live and prosper to cauliflower, but the rice industry is coming for them.
Well, I have some audience questions, and I think what you're talking about actually kind of relates to what some of the questions are. Like, what are your favorite keto meals? And did you go to restaurants and places that eat keto? I mean, like, I think people in San Francisco, like, did you find any
eating
good
out
keto
was
spots?
Definitely the hardest part, because
anything.
I couldn't eat anything. It felt like, so I.
By the way, these questions I'm converging from Daniel and Paul Benadjuri, who's a human colleague.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul. So eating out for breakfast was like one of the easiest things to do. So on weekends, I tried to make brunch dates, more so than like, let's go out for dinner, because I could eat eggs and bacon, a lot of places let you swap out, hash brown and grits for like a mixed green salad on the side. Some of my favorite keto meals were, I ate a lot of cauliflower rice. There's this on-demand meal delivery service called Meal Made in San Francisco, and they cater to like a paleo crowd. And they had a lot of like rice or cauliflower rice-based dishes. I went to like hamburger places a lot and just like ordered it with a lettuce wrap instead of bread. That was really easy. Like I still went to In-N-Out. I still went to Super Duper Burger.
That's kind of my order at In-N-Out. I'll have like one normal burger and then like a couple like protein style burgers. Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of the times when I was eating out, I just had to like make compromises by ordering the things I wanted, but parting with the things I couldn't eat. So like I would eat tacos, but I'd eat the taco fillings like out of the shell. The saddest thing I ever ate was I really craved pizza, and so we got a pizza and I like ate the cheese off of it and like licked off the toppings and left the crust. And we ordered it to go. Like I wasn't gonna do that in public.
That's really sticking to it. I mean, that's hard to do.
It was so hard.
That crust is like a nice. It's yummy.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest test of my willpower I've ever experienced, is not eating the crust on that pizza. But it was like doable.
Yeah, cool.
So,
Haley Bossman, that's a cool last name. Asks, what drove you to be a reporter, and what continues to drive you? I mean, it sounds like it's a childhood dream, but like I guess.
Yeah.
Did it stick up to your expectations now that you've been? Now you're a senior reporter.
Yeah, I mean, I loved talking to people and I loved telling stories. That's what drew me to being a reporter. The thing that it has helped me to stick with it over the years is that I'm always learning, and I think there are only so many careers that like give you that opportunity. I can dive into like any number of topics that I know remotely like nothing about, and hopefully emerge a few weeks later like a pseudo expert, because I have the opportunity to talk to the experts in their fields and pick apart their brains and emerge with like what my readers need to know.
Right.
So I like that this job helps me to learn all the time. And I've, 4 years is like a pretty long time to spend at an outlet, I think, in journalism. But I have like bounced around beats, which keeps it fresh. I've also recently been doing a lot more photography work for the site. The like benefit of working at an online newspaper instead of a print one is that there is like no word count limitation. You don't have to worry about like the money it costs to like print big beautiful photos. So we can go ham with like our visual elements, and I try to do a lot of multimedia storytelling, like big photos where the captions read like text in a story sequentially, and I just think that's a more complete way of telling a story. It gives the reader, another window
that seems to be the
into
future,
it.
right? Like people
Yeah.
obviously people
sure.
talk about like long form dying, but I mean, I don't know if it's dying or not. I mean, there's definitely a place for it, but like if you're gonna have pictures, people like that's just a lot more accessible if you're just like browsing through something. It just makes sense.
We take the approach that length should be the exception, not the rule, because most people don't have the like time or want to put in the effort to reading long form. Yeah. So you kind of want to get the story out in like as few words as possible, which was a really hard, and is still a hard transition for me to make, especially like from studying magazine journalism. Right. I wanted to work at like GQ magazine and the New York Times and places that put out features, and you in this like fast-paced media world, you gotta be on your toes.
Yeah. What's typical turnaround? I mean, I think just getting a little bit, I'm just kind of personally curious about the reporting world. I know I've had people ask me like, what's the best way to even like pitch you or get your attention? But even from there, like how fast are you turning these things around? Yeah. Because it used to be like a month long, you put on an assignment, you come back in a month and you have a story, and it's all you need to do for the month.
Average turnover is probably like 2 to 3 days, so it moves a lot quicker now. I'm not a breaking news reporter, which kind of sets me apart. Like there are definitely people in the BI newsroom who will, make calls and aggregate the reporting out there and put up a story in 30 minutes. Right. Because I do more like evergreen stuff, I'm usually doing the reporting that week and publishing it before the end of the week.
Right.
There are certain features that I'll spend months on, like the Ketogenic Diet story I wrote.
Yeah, that was a couple months long.
That was like months of researching. Yeah. And then some stories that I do just have a lot more legwork involved in planning them. I've done, tours of like super exclusive restaurants where Google and Apple executives eat. And those take a lot of convincing me convincing their PR people to like let me in and write this story about just how frivolous the dining experience is. Recently, I wrote a story about it's called Hiroshi. It's a Japanese restaurant.
I think I saw that article.
Oh, really?
The pictures were
wild. Yeah. So
it's like $200 a person.
$600 a head. They overnight. They overnight Wagyu beef from Japan, and it's served with like sprinkled gold leaf on top. And there's only one table. There's one seating a night. The restaurant has no windows because they want to ensure like absolute privacy. And the guy wouldn't name names, but said like Google, Apple, and Oracle execs have come in to eat, and some even like hold presentations there because they have this like giant, picture of a rainforest that like slides over and reveals a computer monitor behind it.
How was that? That was a fun story, right?
Yeah, that was fun.
So you ate there?
No, everyone thinks I got to eat there.
But you just took pictures?
Understandably, because the headline's like, inside the $600 restaurant where they eat. But I never get to eat at these places.
So they let you take pictures?
They let me take pictures.
And then they took the food out to the...
Yeah.
And you're like, give me a bite.
So they will either like make a few meals ahead of time for me to photograph, or they'll make a few on the spot for me. But at the high-end restaurants, I never get to eat. And I'm guessing it's because the ingredients just, like, cost too much, and they might be, like... Some of the meals they might be just making ahead for that night. Like, the Wagyu beef that I photographed was, like, for that night's dinner. But I also do a lot of stories on fast food chains. I convinced the editor
to be like, hey... You get a little bit more personal color. Yeah. Personal tasting experience, too.
Yeah. Fast food restaurants always want to feed me, though. I've covered a ton of fast food chains here, and I always like leave. They like have to roll me out because I go to town there. But so one like trend I've been covering more lately is healthy fast food chains. We see like an increasing... It's a good segue.
Like, what are the, sort of wrapping up here, like what are the interesting trends that you're excited about? If there's folks out there that are working on interesting projects, like what is capturing your attention at this time?
Yeah. So healthy fast food is definitely one of them because that market is, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's just like begging to be disrupted, I think.
Yeah.
So we're seeing like an increasing number of Americans crave just healthier fast food.
Yeah.
Places like McDonald's and Taco Bell have like had to rethink their menus because of this trend in recent years, and they're like sourcing better, healthier ingredients for it. But then we're also seeing like chains emerge that are just like want to serve you low calorie, responsibly sourced meals.
Right.
So actually just 2 weekends ago, I went to Amy's drive-thru. Amy makes the frozen food meals that you'll find like in the grocery store. They have a drive-thru that is 100% vegetarian, and I ate like a veggie bean burger and a non-dairy chocolate milkshake there. The meal was great. Another one around here is local.
Oh, right.
They have a location in Oakland, and they have one in...
it's a couple celebrity chefs who are making these like...
And their restaurant made headlines this year because the New York Times, like, forerunning food critic Pete Wells reviewed it, which is kind of bizarre because, like, he wouldn't normally do fast food restaurants. He goes for the Michelin
star thing.
Yeah, but I think, like, the restaurant had, like, big names behind it.
Right.
And he just panned it. Like, he was not about it. Oh. But there was, like, a lot of backlash because, you know, you're like holding a fast food restaurant to the same standards you might a Michelin-starred restaurant. Right. And the idea is that, like, you know, this restaurant is like using...
It's like a sub $5 meal.
Yeah, it was so cheap. I think I got like 3 entrees and 3 sides for like less than $30 or less than $20 even. And, you know, like, they're doing really good work. They're like using more organic and like sustainably sourced ingredients in fast food, and they're still keeping it really affordable. So I think like all more power to them. Butter coffee, like I said, is like one that I'm following closely. In the last month, 2 brands have actually brought ready to drink bottled butter coffee to Whole Foods, which is like, you know, I feel like if you make it to Whole Foods, you've made it. Bulletproof Coffee and a specialty coffee brand out of Austin called Picnic are both rolling out to like 400 Whole Food stores this fall.
Duking it out.
Yeah,
Heads
totally.
Up, basically. I mean,
totally.
It sounds like they both kind of launched at the same time.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they both launched at the same time. And the smaller brand beat them to it. And then this is kind of unrelated, but, you know, I cover legal marijuana. When California legalized recreational marijuana, you can't buy it in stores yet. That doesn't come till 2018.
Right.
But you can legally gift it to people, up to 8 ounces of concentrate and an ounce of dry marijuana flower.
It's like the club donation thing.
Yeah. So I could give you up to an ounce of pot if there was no money or services exchange.
Okay.
And so because of that dynamic, we're seeing a lot of like hospitality businesses get in on it. So in the last year, I've tried ganja yoga, which is...
You pay for a yoga class, and then there's some weed
and there's just weed there. Yeah. And it was like as expensive as a normal yoga class. And every week they had like a different vendor donate supplies. That's so I think it was like Bloom Farms that week had vape pens, and we all like vaped before class. And they also offered edibles. And that one, I don't know that I'll be returning to anytime soon because yoga is really hard high, like really hard. I've also done a puff, pass, and paint class, which is just like those wine classes where you like follow the instructor and you paint a picture. Paint night, yeah. But this is with weed. And I just love that there are now experiences for people who prefer marijuana to alcohol. I'm like not a drinker. I think I might have a sensitivity to like gluten in beer because it always makes me feel like garbage.
I've been drinking very rarely too. I mean, it's like very embedded into our culture. Like, let's grab drinks. And it's like, let's have some soda water.
Right. Yeah. Like, and you know, whether you're like taking a meeting with a PR person or like grabbing, you know, hanging out with your friends after work, it's like always centered around alcohol.
Right.
And I think there's like a growing subset of Americans who prefer marijuana. And because of that like gifting structure that I talked about, we're seeing more legal experiences for that audience. So like the Puff Pass Paint class. Another really fun one is the Canosaur series, which is a like underground supper club series.
I think I've heard of it. Like they basically like cook with marijuana.
Cook with marijuana, yeah. You know, even things like as this industry matures, we're seeing like the rise of microdosed products. So these are mostly edibles that have as little as like 5 to 10 milligrams of THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana. And
it makes a lot of sense.
Sales of microdose products are just like taking off because it's a way for people to like consume responsibly. They can take it just like they would if they wanted to like get a buzz on from alcohol, like having a glass of wine at the end of the day. And it's like no longer this, actually, I hate admitting this. I really hope my parents don't watch. Like I went to a friend's house a couple weekends ago when I was visiting Boston, and she like shared some edibles with me, and they like weren't in a package. I don't know who she got them from. And it was like, oh my God, I'd forgotten like how spoiled I was by living in a legal state and going to a prohibition one. And
it was like unknown, and you got super freaking high.
Super freaking high. And it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We went to the Museum of Science, and I like begged her to like just go see the IMAX movie over and over again because like I didn't want to go walk around. So, you know, consumption is like only getting safer as legalization.
Yeah, no, I think that's been feedback. I remember my brother had a funny story where he went to school at Berkeley, and there was like, you know, edibles on the counter, and it's like he just ate some, and they were just like super dose, like you're supposed to eat like a quarter of like, you know, the brownie, and he was just like so high. He was like, oh my God, like what the hell's going on?
Just for the record, I want to say that I am a medical marijuana patient, and I'm legally
don't break any
permitted.
laws. Follow your local laws for all all the listeners out there.
Thank you for letting me make that disclosure.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, we only endorse legal and safe activities here,
There we go. I've written a lot about like other drugs that are popular in Silicon Valley, like ayahuasca, which is a like plant-based psychedelic, and cacao is the new one. People are eating like raw chocolate that they say makes them it like increases your blood flow, so it supposedly just like makes you a happier person. But I've yet to give those a spin. I think I'm gonna stick with my like cheese, eggs, and butter for now.
Maybe these are future stories.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I guess the wrap up here, how do people reach you? I mean, I think it sounds like there's a bunch of, I mean, it's super interesting to hear your full spectrum of experiences, right? I think a lot of people enter the world of biohacking through a lot of different routes, right? Either it's like sort of pseudo-forced in the sense that you got your face broken, you had to like sip a Soylent, you know, wanting to optimize oneself or all of that. So I think it's awesome to hear your particular path to be like, hey, like, I think more and more people are going to be adopting certain parts of biohacking into everyone's lifestyle. Just like everyone is using computers in some part of their, you know, everyday lifestyle.
I think like we see companies in biohacking going more niche, and that's like opening up doors for people who want to get into it. Like I would never have dabbled in nootropics back when it was like something that only existed on Reddit, but you know, with companies like Human existing, there's just like a level of accountability there that makes me feel comfortable trying these products. So yeah, if you're an entrepreneur and you're working in the biohacking space, I would love to hear from you. I
don't know if now you're going to have a deluge of emails.
That's okay. So generally, you know, email is best when talking to reporters. I think most of us hate getting phone calls.
I don't think anyone wants to be like, who's this?
In your pitch, try to make it a personal email. I hate getting like email blasts where you can
hello, whom it may concern.
Like make it personal. You can always tell the ones that are like copy and pasted because the font is like different every other paragraph. And don't do that thing where you're like, oh, I just read your story on how this San Francisco skyscraper is sinking and leaning, and I thought you might be interested in my totally unrelated product. Like, it drives me crazy when people like
it's too cheesy.
Fake read my story, cheesy, and they like are so cheesy. And make sure the pitch tells me like exactly what it is. If I read a pitch and at the end of it I like don't understand what this product is or who it is meant for, I'm probably just not going to respond.
Because there's too much cognitive load. You're just like,
yeah. And then once we get to the interview, you know, don't say things that you don't want printed.
Scaramucci style.
Yeah.
But I guess you had a personal story there.
I mean,
if people got angry because they said something, and you're like, dude.
I just wrote this story recently, and the source was really unhappy with me that I included these quotes. And I think I recently wrote down this Joan Didion quote on a Post-it note and put it on my wall that I wanted to share. It's something like, I'm paraphrasing, you know, I am so like physically unobtrusive and small that people forget my interests as a reporter always run counter to theirs. I don't know that my interests always run counter to yours, but my job is never to serve the source, but instead the reader.
Right.
I'm like nobody's press agent. I'm a reporter. So if you don't want to sound dumb, don't say dumb things.
Which seems obvious, but I guess like I guess it's a part of your job is to elicit like some truth from the source.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, I take a pretty conversational approach to my interviews, and I'm like generally pretty friendly, so I think people like forget sometimes that they're like talking to a reporter, but keep that in the back of your mind. And also, I never mind if people want to include their like marketing person or PR person on the call or like bring them along to the meeting. And if you think that person's presence will like
help you,
and like keep you on message, like I don't mind at all.
You're a professional, you don't care.
So but yeah, I'm, you know, always happy to hear from people. If I don't get back to you right away, you know, I get dozens of pitches a day, and please bear with me. Feel free to ping me again and again, but maybe not like every day in a row. And my email is mrobinson@businessinsider.com, and you can reach me there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Melia. This is a great conversation.
Thanks, Jeff.
As always, find us on Google Play, YouTube, Apple, and SoundCloud. We'll definitely stay in touch and follow your stories. I mean, I think you're doing great work in just covering all the craziness of what people are doing. So I think it's personally super interesting. I think it's also just good for the biohacking community to get, you know, the stories and the people and the efforts out there.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. See you guys next time.